Hi, I'm Joe Neal, and I spend a lot of time during fall and winter at Hobbs State Park Conservation Area and also around Beaver Lake, both in northwest Arkansas. So I thought I'd share a little bit of that with you in this program. How about that color? That's fall color on a sugar maple slope. And those are shortleaf pines at Hobbs. And I just want to mention that these are public lands. That's national resources that we all own. And there's some pretty dramatic, interesting things on a winter day. And a lot of us go bird watching out there, taking our telescopes, and we see interesting things like this flock of cormorants, and even some rare things like a Ross's goose, and a very cool bird, great blue heron, watching for fish, and in migration, pelicans and gulls, and lots of ducks, especially in migration. And of course, one of our favorite ones, greenheads. And these are male and female mallards. And gadwalls. And scops. And buffleheads. And common golden eyes in winter on Beaver Lake and other places. There's a flock of golden eyes. And the golden eyes get out and find fish, and when they find fish, the gulls get interested too. And here's a kind of a rare bird that we find on in northwest Arkansas in winter sometimes, long-tailed duck and hooded merganser. And common loon's one of my favorite. And sometimes you see big flocks like this. These are coots, American coot. And horned grebes, frequently, especially on the north side of Beaver Lake around Slate Gap Road. And that biggest bird in the middle with the yellow bill, that's a western grebe, a kind of a rare bird. And I love seeing the gulls out on the open water. These are Bonaparte's gulls. And these are ringbill gulls standing on ice. And golden crowned kinglet, well named, huh? And red-headed woodpecker, well named. There are two vulture species. This is black vultures, and they have found a deer that was hit on Highway 12 and died, and they're helping to clean it up. And the other vulture is turkey vulture. And we have interesting hawks like this Cooper's hawk and red-shouldered hawks and American kestrels. And look at this roadrunner, it's called a snake. And it's standing on top of a building, a nice warm spot. And occasionally we see screech owls. Look how nicely this screech owl blends against the leaves on this little oak tree. And this is a sapsucker that's found something interesting. And bluebirds, checking out these ripe persimmons. And hermit thrush all the way from the Pacific Northwest. And robins love these cedar berries. And cedar waxwings like this was an icy day, as you can see, like it was real icy. And these ripe persimmons were just perfect for them. Yellow-rumped warbler and pine warbler and a female cardinal and the male cardinal, and Savannah sparrow, and white-throated sparrow. You probably have these in your backyard in winter, and they're up in the woods around Hobbs and around the lake. And dark-eyed juncos, and they come from all over North America. So even though we call them all dark-eyed juncos, they are really a lot of different subspecies. And this is a Lapland longspur, and it was out on a walk around the dam site, and it was quite a surprise. So it was a bird that was migrating through and stopped over briefly. And fox sparrow, and purple finches, and rusty blackbirds, and these were down in Van Hollow at Hobbs. And do you know what that berry is that it's so working over so good? Well, that's from a dogwood tree. Rusty blackbirds. They come all the way from the boreal forests up in Canada. And this is a brown creeper, and it's trying to find, using its kind of chisel-like bill to look for little insects in the bark. And of course, goldfinches are here all year. And look at this. This was at the Hobbs Visitor Center. Can't say too much about making a stop at the Hobbs Visitor Center to their feeders. And there were red crossbills here that day. Look how those bills cross. That's an ecological adaptation that allows them to open up pine cones. Here, of course, they don't have to open up the cones because the seeds are out right there in that tray. And pine siskins. And bald eagles nest around the lake. And if you look closely at this photograph, you'll see something hanging down. So it's found a dead deer, and that's a deer leg. And you see bald eagles all different ages around the lake. And that's, to me, the most interesting part of looking at bald eagles, and that is looking at all the different ages of the birds and the different plumages. So this is a 3rd year. And this is a bird in its 4th year. It's starting to sort of look like an adult. 3rd year bird again. And this is a bird somewhere between the 2nd and 3rd year. And here's a 2nd year bird. And here's a juvenile just out of the nest in that particular year. There are now at least 6 bald eagle nests around Beaver Lake, and I think maybe the actual number is 8. So in 2020, I think they might have had 8 nests. And there's a juvenile again. Isn't that a dramatic plumage? Interesting bird. 3rd year bird flying off. And we have bald eagles here in the winter sometimes. There are roosts that form. And this particular roost was over at Decatur, and you could see a lot of bald eagles right in that one spot. You can count them up. Well, I'm not going to leave the picture up there that long, but they're all different ages, and they're all gathering around, some good feeding opportunities. And look at that. A lot of those birds in that rising thermal are actually bald eagles. So you, American public, whoever you are watching, you've done good with the Endangered Species Act in bringing back a bird we almost lost. And I just want to mention that there's a lot of opportunities to enjoy going out bird watching. And this is Joni Patterson, who's the Vice President of Northwest Arkansas Audubon Society and a teacher at Ozark Natural Science Center. And you can see just a little bit ecologically of Hobbs. Pines up on the ridges and hardwoods down in the holler. And look at this, cedars and interesting rock outcrops. And there are glades around there. They're open, grassy areas. And the glades have lots of interesting plants and animals in them. Like we saw this bat one day, and interesting goldenrod plants. And those are all native grasses under that power line, and that's on Slate Gap Road on the north side of Beaver Lake. And the original landscape here was probably 100 feet lower than where the water is. So this was an upper bluff line. And there's an interesting juniper tree up there. It's called Ash's Juniper, and that's in a site up by Beaver Dam. And look at those berries on the Ash's Juniper. And Indian grass growing on a glade. And a northern fence lizard. They're calling these prairie lizards now, I think, for proper name. This is kind of like what it looks like today. I'm talking to you on December 16th, 2020, and we got snow on the ground. And interesting plants. And during migration, monarch buffalo here in one day in October 2011, we saw almost 100 monarchs in a very small area where a flock of monarchs, I guess you'd call it that, had settled down on this native white crownbeard patch. And that's just a weed that we think of just as a weed, but it's a very important plant. And witch hazels. And just how about that landscape view there? And I thank you for joining me on this trip today.